Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So, I wanted to share with you the latest updates on the case of the man who was deported to that infamous El Salvador prison without due process, or one of the men. And we know for certain now that the Trump administration has zero evidence of this man, Abrego Garcia, being in a gang. I will explain how we know that in a few minutes. So, before I dive into the details, though, please do me a favor. Please click the subscribe button below this video. It's free for you. It is a huge help in exposing Trump's unconstitutional actions to people who otherwise would not see it. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with everyone you know. Really appreciate it. And I thank you in advance. So here's the deal. As I mentioned the other day, the Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump and his administration needed to, quote unquote, facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. As you all know by now, two separate judges, one in 2019, and then another one just about a month ago, ruled that Garcia has done nothing wrong and that there is no evidence whatsoever to show that he had any gang affiliation or had committed any crimes. And what we're learning is that Garcia was accused of being a gang member. And this is another embarrassing detail for the Trump administration. It totally undermines their argument. In Garcia's 2019 deportation, the judge initially refused to release him from custody. The Trump administration had taken him into custody back then. They were trying to deport him. The judge said, let's keep him in while I look all of this over, while I, read through the documents and investigate anything that you guys have or claim that you have against him, see if there's anything to this. One of the reasons the judge decided to keep him behind bars pending an investigation was because the lead investigator, which was a police detective named Ivan Mendez, he told the court that Garcia was a member of MS-13. He gave a sworn declaration to the court. Okay. This was totally proven false. They based this on the fact that he was wearing a Chicago Bulls baseball cap and then a sweatshirt that had like the presidents on the front of it or something. And he had tattoos. And so, yeah, total bogus allegations based on nothing. And so Garcia was ultimately released. Now we know that detective is not exactly a credible witness, not someone you would want to base a case on. That same year, in 2019, Detective Mendez was suspended from the police department for giving confidential case information to a commercial sex worker, a prostitute. And he was paying her for sex for himself. So that detective was later indicted for the crimes. He was indicted in 2020. And then the court records show that he ultimately pleaded guilty. He was given probation. So, yeah, even in Trump's first term, he couldn't keep Garcia behind bars because they had no evidence against him other than the word of a disgraced cop and some jailhouse informant who said, oh, he's the leader of MS-13 in New York, a state where he didn't even live. And because he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a sweatshirt, a hoodie with the presidents on it. That's it. And the judge in that 2019 decision, as you all know, specifically barred Garcia's deportation to El Salvador, which was his home, because Garcia had faced retaliation by gang members who had already assaulted, physically beat up his family members because they were trying to recruit him and his brother to the gang, and they refused to join. So it's the complete opposite of what Trump is saying. So the Trump administration continues to lie about this man. They're doing it in writing and they're doing it on camera. So if he ever returns to the US, even if he doesn't, I mean, if I was his wife, who's a US citizen, I would definitely be suing some people for defamation. People like Carolyn Leavitt, I will always call her Leavitt, as I've said, they will be at risk of a defamation lawsuit. And they'll be at risk of an investigation when and if the Democrats take the House back. I can almost guarantee it. To see who went along with this shit, who went along with this unconstitutional behavior. Because here's the thing, Carolyn Leavitt on Monday said on camera that Garcia was a gang member and a human trafficker. That is complete and total bullshit. And I would imagine she's going to find out the same way that Rudy Giuliani found out. Anyway, Trump is openly defying the Supreme Court. However, they tossed this case back down to the district court for their enforcement of their decision, of their ruling. And so the Trump administration is continuing to stonewall this lower court judge. They refuse to give any details about Garcia or share what, if anything, they've done to try to bring him back to the U.S. Instead, in a hearing this Tuesday, the Justice Department attorney told the judge, quote, "If Mr. Abrego Garcia presents at a port of entry or the U.S. Embassy, we will facilitate his return into the United States." Yeah, again, we're paying $6 million to house these men, 90% of which Bloomberg News has said haven't done anything wrong, have not committed a crime, have not been convicted of a crime in the United States. So that judge, the U.S. District Judge, is Paula Zinnes. She just ruled this week that the Trump administration has to turn over documents and they have to sit for depositions with Garcia's attorneys because she wants them to ask questions about, what's being done, if anything's being done, who's giving these rulings or who's giving these directives, blah, blah, blah. So in her ruling, Judge Zinnes said, quote, "At a minimum, to take the steps available to them toward aiding, assisting, or making easier Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. But the record reflects that defendants have done nothing at all." And then she made it clear she's not going to put up with any of their reindeer games. She told them, quote, "We have to give process to both sides, but we're going to move. There will be no tolerance for gamesmanship or grandstanding. If I make a finding of contempt, it will be based on the record before me." So we'll see if they comply. We'll see if they even bother to show up for these depositions, if they bother to turn any documents over. In the meantime, several Democratic lawmakers are wanting to travel to El Salvador to confront the president there and try to gain access to Garcia, even just to make sure the man is still alive. So one senator, Chris Van Hollen, he actually did fly over there. Another group is planning to go, or they're talking about it. He was not able. The president of El Salvador blew him off, would not meet with him. The vice president, though, met with him and said, "Yeah, we're holding these people because Trump is paying us to." So it's very clear who holds the cards and who's in charge here, right? I mean, all Trump has to do is pull the funding, as I've mentioned before, or even threaten, "Yeah, I'm not going to pay for this. So you should probably send them back. We're going to send a plane and we're bringing them back." And as I've mentioned before, the agreement they have with El Salvador is for them to hold these men for 1 year. And then the Trump administration said, "We'll let you know at that time what we decide to do with them." So Trump is 100% in control of this. It is bullshit for them to play these games and pretend that they have no say and, "Oh, they're out of our jurisdiction. We can't do anything about it. Once they've left the US, it's not up to us. And he's El Salvador. He's from El Salvador. So, we can't tell them what to do with their citizens." Really? You told him to take him. You're paying for him to keep him there. It's bullshit. It's complete and total bullshit. And as I've said before, this administration has every incentive to make these men disappear for good because they do not want them in front of a camera telling the media what they went through. It would blow his whole facade of, oh, we're just deporting the worst of the worst. And it's worth mentioning, if the Trump administration really believed that Garcia or any of these other men that they dumped in El Salvador were truly guilty of crimes or being part of a gang, why didn't they allow the courts to decide that? Why were they so afraid for these men to get due process and go before a judge? Whether you're a US citizen or not, once you are in this country, you are entitled to due process. That's the way our Constitution works. The law does not allow for Trump or anyone else to unilaterally decide that someone is guilty and then ship them off to somewhere without even so much as a hearing. And again, if he can do this to immigrants, he can do this to American citizens. He can just say, well, I washed my hands of it. They're already in the custody of another country, so I can't tell them what to do. So, if the Supreme Court allows this to stand and they don't even attempt to intervene and make Trump follow the laws in the Constitution, then he is literally above the law and he can disappear anyone and everyone who disagrees with him. That is when foreign powers may need to step in to help us. I also want to mention the Trump administration is very clearly getting nervous. They're very obviously aware that public opinion is turning against them in this matter, because just yesterday they posted court documents on Twitter, and it shows that Garcia's wife obtained a restraining order against him in 2021. The documents say that Garcia hit and scratched her during an argument, but he was never convicted of any crime. Everything was dropped. His wife went on or she said on the news or in an interview, or maybe it was just a statement, I'm not sure, but she said that, they went on to get counseling. They worked through their marital issues, that she had been in an abusive relationship prior to this. And so she filed the restraining order out of an abundance of caution and because it freaked her out, but he never did it again, blah, blah, blah. So I have a couple of thoughts on this. So first, as longtime viewers know, I have no patience for men who assault women. Okay. I grew up in a very violent household with an extremely violent father. There is no excuse for it. However, at the same time, that statement stands. Do I believe that this man should spend the rest of his life in a black hole prison when he never even receives so much as a hearing? And for something that he did, what was that, 4 years ago when he was 25 years old? No, I don't. And again, everyone residing in this country is allowed due process. All of the January 6th defendants were given due process. Regardless of what they say, they all had their day in court or they were allowed to take a plea deal. And there were some of those January 6th defendants and convicts who were living in the US with green cards or student visas. Imagine how MAGA would have melted down if Joe Biden had deported any of them after they broke into our US Capitol and actually committed crimes that day. He would have been justified, right? He would have been justified in getting these people out of the country when they actually attacked our nation's capital and terrorized everyone in that building in order to try to overturn a lawful election. Imagine if Biden had thrown them on a plane without even so much as a hearing and then dumped them in a foreign country where they've never lived. Exactly what Trump has done with so many of these men. So Anyway, as I said in the beginning, this shows their desperation. This, to me, the release of this restraining order proves that Trump, they absolutely have no evidence to show that Garcia was a gang member and a human trafficker, as they claim. Because if they did, if they had that evidence, they would have posted that on Twitter and they would have given it to a judge by now. So it shows they have no evidence against him. They're grasping at straws. They're trying to undermine his credibility. And this is all they've got. It shows they're desperate and they're worried. They're worried that public opinion on this is turning. So, as it should, I believe that there were a lot of people in this country who voted for Trump thinking, oh, he's going to get, he's going to get the dangerous people out. He's going to get the criminals, the violent people out. Not realizing how he was going to take this way beyond that and actually violate our Constitution in the process. So anyway, guys, I will let you know when I hear more about this case. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share, and subscribe. Please donate if you can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.